Hello everyone, it's Sunday. You know what that means? Time for another confessions video. This is confessions number 42, part 4. Hello everyone, I'm the host of these confessions videos. My name is Mr. Ozzy Rose. I hope everyone is having a great day on this nice sunny warm Sunday. As you know, we go usually into the archives of my past. The good Lord blesses me with what to talk about in each one right before I hit it. In this confessions video, I'm going to talk about when my sister passed away. When my sister passed away, I had just rented an apartment in Truman maybe a week before she died, and before she was in the NEA hospital, I went to her where her and her husband was staying with his brother at the time, and I was taking care of her at home so my brother-in-law could go work, and I was giving her medicines and stuff like that. And I knew she was going to die at that time, probably within 2 weeks. I mean, she was totally deteriorated. So, and I told my brother-in-law that. I said, she ain't going to live probably past another couple of weeks, if that. He said, yeah, I know. I said, she's knocking on heaven's door right now. And I was going back and forth from my apartment in Truman to there. Some nights I stayed there to help take care of her. Some nights I didn't. But she wound up, I was supposed to be at their house around 8 that morning. I was an hour late, I think I was an hour late, something like 45 minutes to an hour late getting there. When I got there, she was done gone. I knew my brother-in-law was gone, his brother was gone working. Couldn't get nobody to the door, so I knew something had happened. So I started calling the area hospitals here, and I found out where she was at. She was at NEA, so I drove there, and I said, why didn't you wait on me? I said, I know I was about 45 minutes late. She said, it was for pain. I couldn't wait anymore. I called an ambulance. I said, now they're going to wind up putting you in a hospice house. I said, I bet hospice come and took all your medicine before you got on that ambulance. She said, yeah. I said, so that's probably what's going to happen. She goes, I know, but I couldn't help it. The pain was just so bad. So I was still going back and forth. She wound up staying in the hospital there about 9-10 days. They couldn't get her in a hospice house. They wanted to, but there wasn't no beds available. So the last day that I actually got to see her there, I told her, I said, look, I got to go back to the apartment in Truman. I know I got some flooding in there. I said, I'm going to make sure with the nurses, if you're going to be okay till tomorrow morning, I'll be back here tomorrow morning. I said, but I'll come right back in and let you know what they tell me. So I went and talked to the nurses. I said, now, if I come back, she'll be okay until I get back at 8 in the morning here, right? And they said, yeah. I said, she's not going to die between now and then. They said, no, she should be fine. I said, okay. So I went back and I told her what they told me. And she said, okay, brother. I said, I love you. She said, you too. And I went to my apartment in Truman. I had some flooding in there. I had to take care of it. At the time, I was on a sleep apnea machine and an electronic oxygen tank, and my bedroom was in the far back of the apartment. She died about 3:45 in the morning. A family friend had come and beat on the doors with Truman PD. I never heard them because of these machines. I had my door shut to my bedroom too. So I didn't know anything. So I got there at 8 in the morning in NEA hospital, and I walked in her room and I seen a different woman in the bed, and the nurse motioned for me to go back out. So I did, and she said, was your sister the one that was in here? I said, yeah, I'm her brother. I said, wow. I said, what's going on? She said, I'm sorry, but she died at 3:45 in the morning. I said, oh no. And she said, yeah. She said, I'm sorry. I said, what happened? And she said that she bled out. Within 3 minutes, she bled out and died from the privates. So I didn't have a smartphone at the time either. I didn't have no kind of phone. Nobody could call me and let me know anything. So I used the hospital phone, and I called my brother-in-law, and he was, of course, naturally screaming and crying. And so I went to where he was at. Now, being said, I knew that he was a meth user at the time, and I was on the way there. I just knew I couldn't. Another tragedy, and I couldn't cope. I couldn't deal. You know, so I knew he had meth. So I started getting high with him. I stayed high with him for 5 straight days. Then I went to my apartment in Truman. On the way, I stopped at the liquor store, got me 5 pints of 100 proof peppermint schnapps. I had an 8 ball of dope, and I told myself, this is how I'm going to die. I'm just going to do drugs and alcohol till I die, because I cannot cope and deal anymore on life's terms, on death's terms. It was always tragedy after tragedy in my life, and that was the last tragedy that there was going to be. You know, there was no other family, no nothing. And that's what I told myself. I was just going to, you know, I'd never been hooked on a drug or a drink, but it wasn't that I was setting out, to get hooked on a drug and a drink, but I wanted to die by the way of the drug and the drink. And I told myself I'm going to do so much dope and I'm going to drink so much that I'm going to die. At the time, I weighed 255 pounds. Within a month, I was down to 133. My hair on my entire body was ivory from all the dope, the meth that I was using. I was using so much dope. The 100 proof schnapps, you know, I got to where I couldn't do without the dope, without not having the schnapps with it, and vice versa. Of course, I felt like a fucking yo-yo. But that, you know, I wanted to die by the way of the almighty drug and the almighty drink. Because, like I said, I couldn't deal with life on life's terms anymore, but I couldn't deal with death on death's terms. I'd done killed myself 5 times in life, and they brought me back. So I told myself I won't intentionally kill myself like I did the other 5 times. I just will do so much dope and so much drink until I do die. That's what I wanted to do. That's the only thing I wanted to do, you know. And so it come to a head. I was tired of the withdrawals from both, tired of doing the dope, tired of doing the drink, and finally I just said, this is how I'm going to end it. I'm going to do 8 hotlines of this dope, and I've done drank 3.5 pints of the 100 proof peppermint schnapps. I'm going to finish the rest of the schnapps off first, and then I'm going to do the 8 hotlines, and then I will die. Well, I didn't die. I just suffered a stroke. Now, being said, the only thing that it did was it really messed up my speech really bad, and my mouth was to the right. I was so paranoid most of the time anyways, because I knew the cops in Truman, when they seen me, my hair was ivory white, my face, everything was ivory white. They knew I was doing so much dope. They had raided me 6 times. They never found anything. Finally, Davidson said, Ozzy, why didn't you ever tell me to get a search warrant? I said, Davidson, if I'd have told you that, it would have looked like I went against Truman PD. And he said, well, I'm going to put in my report that you're not selling dope. I said, no, sir. I said, never have done that. But I knew they knew I was doing dope. That I do know. And he said, but I can't speak for the county. I said, county's never given me no trouble. But he kept the word. You know, Truman PD kept their word. They never raided me anymore. But when I finished off the schnapps and I done the 8 hotlines, I remember getting up and I was going to my air conditioner, shut it off. And I passed out. When I woke up, half my body was on the couch, half of it was in the floor, and my mouth was to the right, and I couldn't say hardly anything, maybe a couple little tiny words. My voice was kind of different. And I was so paranoid, and I didn't have a phone. I couldn't call me an ambulance, so I waited a week before I finally went to a neighbor and had them call an ambulance for me. My mouth was still to the right. I really still couldn't say much. They took me to St. Bernard. I got a scolding after they found out what was wrong with me, kind of a scolding. And they said that, yeah, you had a stroke. And what the result of that was, the doctor told me that he would set me up to see another doctor. He could set me up for speech therapy, but he said, since I live by myself, just say whatever I can say. Eventually my mouth will go back right to like it's supposed to, and I'll have my full voice and full words back. So that's what I did. I mean, I've done checkups with doctors and stuff like that, like you wanted me to. I think it was a couple of months, 2.5, 3 months down the road, I was fully okay. But that's what I'm saying. I was miserable. If people that would have known me back then see me today, they'd say total transformation, and that's true. That's going to be about a wrap for this confessions video. God bless you all. Thank you so much, and we'll see you for the next one. So long, everybody.